Okay, we'll take a few questions. I would really appreciate if some of them could be directed to the Colonel. Any questions?
Colonel, what do you think the challenges are for the Ohio National Guard going forward?
The challenge is this new mission of the Homeland Response Force. Obviously, with the war having gone on for this many years, to keep the soldiers refreshed and keep that flow of soldiers coming, keep the training at the levels that we have to, keeping that up-tempo, or that high level of tempo going, and keeping our soldiers motivated.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been in serving, and what kind of work you've done?
Sure. I've enlisted in the National Guard way back in 1978. I've served for 32 years. Went through officer candidate school to become an officer and have served in that capacity, commanding at all levels from company, battalion, and now brigade, and now soon to be state. I've served in other staff positions. This is obviously the most significant opportunity that could be bestowed upon me.
Tell them a little bit about your work, both with the personnel brigade and also with the work with the Homeland Security. I think they'd like to hear that.
Two great opportunities I've had, two significant events, is to stand up to new organizations. When the state of Ohio was going to have the opportunity to have additional force structure, we got a personnel service battalion. I was asked at that time to take command of that organization, which meant pulling the resources, the personnel resources that were already in Ohio, together under one command. Had that privilege. That helped us to focus all the personnel assets to make sure that their priorities were straight, and that we kept a certain equality in service provided to all of our soldiers. And now this Homeland Response Force, which is a joint mission, I get to command both Army and Air National Guardsmen in this mission. As Governor-elect Kasich said, there are only two right now in the nation, in the state of Washington and Ohio. And what it is that when an event would happen in east of the Mississippi, the first responders, of course, would be there, the local firemen and all those first responders that respond to any type of an incident. And we'd be the first military forces to go in and reinforce that. We have the capability to detect what type of agent may be in existence in the area. We then have personnel trained to decontaminate people and equipment that may have been affected by whatever that agent is, and to provide a stabilization force or security forces to make sure that people don't get out of hand and that we keep everything very organized. And we have a search and extraction team that can go in, and if there's been a building collapse, they can pull people out of the rubble so that we can get them decontaminated and save their lives. We have a medical detachment that would stabilize anybody that was injured in that type of event and then forward them on for medical care to a higher level of services.
Can you give us an idea of how the Guard itself has changed over the last 32 years? Did you believe the day that you came into the Guard that a woman could someday lead it?
Honestly, not when I first came in, but when I was a second lieutenant, I'm a little emotional because my father's an Alzheimer's patient. He's a colonel. He was a colonel in the Guard. When I was a second lieutenant, he pulled me aside and said, "Deb, you can be the assistant adjutant general of this organization." Well, I told him the other day, "Dad, you set the bar too low." I'm having the opportunity to serve at the adjutant general level. Yes?
Okay. Don't ask, don't tell is a big issue in Washington.
Yes.
Do you have a position on it?
I do not. We serve at the pleasure of our leaders, and we will serve in any capacity they deem necessary.
Colonel, have you served in? Have you been deployed to other nations in conflicts? Can you tell us a little bit?
I have not been deployed in conflict. I've been deployed to Central America and South America for different types of missions.
Just tell her what you did down there. I like the generals like this. They don't say much, you know. It's just clipped. No, go ahead. Tell me a little bit about what you did there.
Probably the most significant for me personally was deploying to South America, where there had not been U.S. forces for a while. I got sent to Argentina with a medical detachment or medical organization. We flew into this great city of Buenos Aires, which is very metropolitan, very European. And then we soon got on a plane and flew up to the third world nation that I didn't know existed in Argentina, right up by the Bolivian border. There we were helping to treat the citizens and teach them care on how to help prevent cholera and some of the significant medical issues they were dealing with. We dispensed medications and went into a lot of unsavory areas to try to treat them medically. That was pretty cool. That what I didn't understand is that they thought I was a front for the DEA, and I had not expected the Yankee Go Home rallies and things that I was faced with. And I have to say that there was a little bit of language barrier. Spanish was not a very natural language for me, so I was stubborn. And so you're counting on interpreters to take care of you and all that. But it was a very intriguing mission, a very fulfilling mission. When I went to Central America a couple times, it was to help in support of the devastation because of the hurricanes and all that went on down there, and everything from commanding task forces out in different countries, Nicaragua being the most significant because we hadn't had military forces in there since the events that took place, and building schools, building roads, building bridges and those sort of things down there. So I've had many really fantastic opportunities. I don't know whether to say, unfortunately, I haven't been over to the theater of war now, or fortunately I haven't been, but only because I represent soldiers and airmen that have had to have that opportunity.
And how many Ohio National Guardsmen are deployed now?
552 right now.
And that's out of 16,000?
Yes, a little over 16,000.
I think we expect a larger deployment next year.
We do.
And of those 532, they're basically divided between Iraq and Afghanistan. And I mentioned to the colonel today, we want to keep very close tabs on them so that we can provide assistance to the families, if needed, counseling to families, and there's an opportunity to provide that kind of service. And I think we want to be right on top of it, and we want to track very closely our people as they're deployed. And I think next year we're expecting a fairly significant additional deployment. Is that right, Colonel?
Yes, sir, you're right on target. Our infantry brigade, infantry brigade combat team is deploying next year. The deployment got pushed a little bit, so they got to stay home a little bit longer. But about 1,000-man organization, 1,000-person organization will be deploying.
Colonel, what do you think generally of the greater role of the National Guard in terms of national military operations?
Obviously, our role has changed. As Governor Kasich said, we're no longer a weekend warrior. We've become an operational force, which means that we're integrated into our services, the Army and the Air Force, and they count on us to carry part of the mission of our nation's forces.
It's changed quite a bit. I served on the Armed Services Committee for 18 years, and I saw the up-tempo, which is the way in which you measure the readiness of Guard and Reserve, increasingly stressed. And I think it's fair to say that the Secretary Gates right now views this as a very, very high priority, particularly giving people, as they get ready to deploy, make sure they're in a position to have had experience, not just with the training, but the equipment as well. And this has always been a challenge, Jim, to get people ready, even though they may not be called. But now they're viewed as such an active part of deployment. I think that attitude is changing. And in that regard, I believe the Colonel and I will make a trip to work with the Ohio delegation to make sure that whatever the needs are of Ohioans, of our Ohio Guard, will be met, because we have to constantly push for the resources we need to train and equip and prepare them for the mission. But we also have to recognize the fact that in terms of an emergency inside of this state, these folks are very, very well trained. You have some sort of a terrible mishap, they're ready to move in. That's why it's so critical that we have excellence within the Guard. And frankly, I think the Guard's done a very good job. I think we have a strong Guard. But you can always improve, continue to improve. And when it comes to the operations in our state, some tragedy, God forbid, should happen, the Guard will be there. If you ever go down to the football stadium down here, when we put 110, 12,000 people in that stadium, if you walk around that stadium, keep your eyes peeled, you will see some of our National Guardsmen deployed down there with other security components. So we have to look at them as people that will go and defend the country overseas. They got to be ready, but we also have to look at them in terms of what they can do within this state. And for the colonel to be in a position to be able to actually respond to emergencies, you know, it seems like every day I open up the newspaper, I'm reading about a Swede Islamist over there that, you know, another suicide bomber attack. We have to be very, very vigilant. We'll have more to say about all of that when we move forward with an announcement on public safety and all that. But public safety will be fully integrated with the National Guard and with local law enforcement, the Highway Patrol. It is all critical that it's seamless, that it works together, and they can respond efficiently and effectively.
Thanks, everyone.